nuclear. I'm calling this one thermonuclear.
Thermonuclear verdict. All right.
Nearly $500 million.
From nuclear verdicts and a new bill in Congress to autonomous trucks and more. Joining us to talk about all of it, Mark Schremmer and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. Gentlemen, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I want to start with a story we did cover briefly, but frankly, I don't think we gave enough time to when it happened. A testament really to how much is really going on these days out there. And the story is about a $462 million nuclear verdict against the trailer manufacturer Wabash. It was slashed by a judge last week. Before we get into what happened, what might happen next here, Tyson, you've been covering this. Just briefly, if you could break down the case for us, for those who may not be familiar.
Last September, the jury found Wabash liable for a fatal crash involving a passenger vehicle that essentially rammed into a stopped tractor-trailer. Plaintiffs during the case, so the plaintiffs representing two men that were killed in the crash, they convinced the jury that the rear underride guard of that trailer was defective and unreasonably dangerous, despite the fact that underride guard met all the federal regulatory standards. And so during the trial, the plaintiff's attorneys were allowed to submit documents detailing this massive conspiracy of lobbying efforts that date back to the 1960s, despite the fact that Wabash was not founded until 1985. So that was kind of controversial. On the other hand, so another thing that's worth noting is that neither passenger vehicle occupant was wearing a seatbelt, and the driver was over the legal limits with the blood alcohol content. None of that evidence was allowed to be presented during trial. So very controversial, kind of highlighted the need for tort reform. And then, they handed out, you call it nuclear. I'm calling this one thermonuclear.
Thermonuclear verdict. All right.
Nearly $500 million. And so, as you would imagine, Wabash was like, no.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. So
hard pass.
They asked, so this is a state court in Missouri. It was the St. Louis jury that decided this. And what Wabash had asked the court was a couple things. Number one is for a new trial that would allow them to present the seatbelt use and intoxication evidence. And then barring that, at the very least, to reduce that, the excessive verdict. And so the court kind of granted one of two. So they denied the motion for a new trial. So no, we were right about excluding seatbelt and intoxication evidence. But yes, this is a little steep. $500 million is a lot. So they cut it down by 76%, which is still $108 million. I mean, it's crazy to think you can cut a verdict down by 76%, and it's still nine figures. So that's kind of what happened. And so I checked the docket just before I came up here to talk to you, and it turns out just the other day that Wabash did what we all knew they were going to do, which is they did file a notice to appeal. So we're going to see this in the state court of appeals, to surprise of nobody.
Yeah, and we see these all the time, obviously, these thermonuclear verdicts, as you have dubbed them there.
Is it dropped back down to nuclear now, though?
It's down to nuclear,
nuclear.
Right.
It's just frustrating because you talk about the need for tort reform. I think this is a classic case of what are we doing here, because they didn't take all of these things into account.
Yeah, and you think for truck drivers, if you're doing anything wrong as far as hours of service or sleep, they'll focus in on the minutia of everything a driver might have done in one of these crashes. And meanwhile, we can't even include in the evidence that somebody's blood alcohol content or the fact that the damages may be worse because they weren't wearing a seatbelt. All of these things, to me, from a common sense standpoint, are extremely relevant. And you would like to see some tort reform to at least have this sort of stuff included. And like you mentioned, too, putting Wabash on the hook for things that took place decades before they were even a company. And, they were following the regulations that were on the books. Right. So, to say that they're doing something wrong, everything's followed, all of this, and to see those, like you said, nearly $500 million or whatever it was, the ridiculous amount. Yeah, we definitely need some changes.
So in this case, what happened was called the reptile theory, and trials where you appeal to the emotions of the jury. There's a lot of controversy in that. People like to see that tort reform, which is not likely. But when it comes to seatbelt use, that's gaining some traction in tort reform. So 15 states explicitly allow evidence of seatbelt use, where about half of states explicitly prohibit evidence of seatbelt use. There's a bill in Nebraska right now to reverse that, for they can allow seatbelt use, and then Georgia just passed a law to where they will now allow seatbelt use. So it's gaining some traction on that ground. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and the other frustrating thing is too, all of this depends on which state you're in, when it happens, which state the lawsuit's filed in. There's different rules in different places. It's a mess out there. I do not approve, just for the record. But we'll see. Yeah, tort reform on the state level, we're seeing more and more of that, so that's encouraging.
So did they not ask you beforehand?
No, they didn't. They didn't consult with me, which I don't understand.
That seems unfair.
It does seem unfair. I don't like it. I think it's a bad move on their part. But hey, they're going to do what they're going to do. Maybe next time. We'll see. I want to move on here. We've got another new bill in the U.S. House that'll be familiar to people who pay attention to these kinds of things. It comes from Congressman Doug LaMalfa of California, and it would lower the cost of heavy trucks. Mark, it's not quite that simple, but talk about the basics of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so this isn't a new one, as you mentioned. It's been introduced several times over the past few legislative sessions, and basically it would remove the federal excise tax on heavy trucks and trailers. It suggests that it could save, somewhere between like $15,000 to $30,000 on these. It's been something that, like I said, has been introduced several times. It hasn't gotten a whole lot of traction, but one of the reasons it is important this year is because I know we've said this quite often, but it's because it's important. This is highway bill time, and we should be expecting. So a lot of these things that probably have no chance of passing as a standalone bill, since it's going to be a highway bill, the chances drastically improve of having something like this maybe tacked on, to a larger highway bill package as a provision. And this is something that we look at. Obviously, people in the manufacturers of trucking would certainly, want something like this. The concern, I think, from small business truckers and OIDA is that when you remove a tax, they're still going to want their money at the end of the day, the government. So what is going to be the pay for? How are they going to fix it? And is that going to end up negatively impacting small business truckers? That has been kind of the OIDA's criticism of this, each time it's been introduced. And that has never really been answered of what would be the offset.
Right. That just to underscore that real quick, the concern is that you're taking that, 12% tax away. You've got a shortfall in the Highway Trust Fund, and you're going to have to find money somewhere else. And is it going to come from, the bread and butter of small business truckers?
Yeah, and everybody's so seems enamored with tolling and different ways to get the money out of small business truckers in various ways. So what would be the way that they would go about it? I think that's the main concern.
Yeah, it seems like with a lot of bills, the devil's in the details, and this one, the devil's in the lack of the details. Is kind of what we're seeing here.
Sure, and it just also it speaks to some of these bills, as you're kind of pointing out there, Tyson. It does one thing, but if you do one thing, it's the reaction, right?
Yeah.
You've got an action, there's a reaction somewhere down the line. We're not quite sure what that reaction will be, especially with this one, as you point out, Tyson.
Plus, they didn't check with you.
That too. Right?
They did not check with me on this one either. I'm starting to sense that maybe they don't want my feedback, and that hurts a little bit, but I'll deal with that, I guess, later on when I'm laying down on the couch. Let's talk about Aurora here. We've got a few more minutes. We've talked about this before. Aurora plans to deploy fully autonomous trucks on Texas roadways at some point this month. They did release a safety report ahead of that, Tyson. unsurprisingly, they're saying all the right things about safety here.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, they didn't send out reports saying, you know what, it's not that good.
Maybe
it's not
not.
ready.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, so like in the final week of March, head into April, the big month where they're supposed to deploy all these trucks on public roadways. Yeah, they have to kind of make an effort. The way I look at it, it's like the final push to kind of convince the general public, like these are fine, these are safe, don't worry about it. So it's like a 75-page report on just detailing, their safety procedures, the operations, the software, the hardware, the systems, all that. Some of it gets kind of into the technical weeds, but again, very detailed to kind of show, it's like, hey, we have crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's. Here is our homework. We're showing our work here, and here it is for you. A bit of transparency. We did learn a couple of interesting details. So I've always been under the impression that these trucks are only allowed to drive on highways and highways only, but they are programmed to drive on arterial, collector, connector, frontage, limited access, and highways alike. So they can go pretty much anywhere, including suburban and urban areas and dense traffic. Now, whether or not they will use them there is a different question as far as the driverless operations, but they are capable of doing that. They will also reach speeds as high as 75 miles per hour. Now, granted, the cruising speed will be 65 miles per hour, reserving 75 miles per hour for merging or passing, but they can reach those speeds. And then it's like, well, when can they drive? Pretty much anytime, night or day. As far as the weather goes, light to medium rain, winds up to 25 miles per hour. Anything worse than that, the truck has to stop. So those are the parameters by which these truly driverless trucks can operate. So we know that much. Outside of that, again, there's a whole bunch of details about the safety benefits and the safety systems that are put into place. One thing I found interesting is that they will have this command center of humans that will be monitoring these fleets 24/7. However, the humans at the command center will not be able to remotely control the truck. They cannot override that.
Just monitoring.
Just
right?
monitor it,
Yeah.
and if something odd is happening, these human operators can suggest to the truck to do something. And if the truck seems
Excuse me, truck.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And if the truck's like, oh, that seems reasonable, then it will take that suggestion and do it. And so, but the truck has full control.
I'm glad it's a command center of humans and not a command center of dogs or cats. So I think
This is good.
I think we're on the right track there.
I concur, yes.
But in all seriousness,
Yeah.
we're entering a new era here. I don't think that's too far out to say. And we have a lot. I know Mark's looking at me with questions in his eyes.
Well,
and
it
concerns
feels
in
like it feels like some sort of old sci-fi movie or whatever, like where the computer is saying, like the human is suggesting, pull over to the side of the road. This is dangerous. I don't think so,
Actually,
Dave.
yeah, exactly. I know. And you've pointed out in coverage, Mark, that we're still not sure how they're going to comply with regulations that require a human to do certain things.
Yeah.
And we still don't have that answer.
No,
Right?
we don't. I mean, my guess at this point, Tyson and I have talked about this recently. I think that we're probably going to see another exemption request here soon, because it appears from the safety report that they're sticking with the idea of the beacons that had been denied. So maybe they will try that out in a different way. But I don't know if FMCSA sticks to its guns and does not grant them the exemption of using those light devices as opposed to the driver putting the triangles out. I don't know how they're going to comply.
We will keep an eye on this, and I do want to talk to both of you at some point again in the near future when this happens, what it looks like, what our fears are, concerns are. It's going to be a long conversation that will take place over several months and years probably, but definitely one worth revisiting. Tyson, Mark, we appreciate it as always.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks.
And you can check out Mark and Tyson's exceptional work each and every day on Landline.media and, of course, in every issue of Landline Magazine. Time now for a break, but hang tight. We're back right after this.